what I want to do today is I want to take us really down into one particular area, because that area that I've just ring fenced there is what can give any leader immediately a frame and a guide for how they can measure and understand who they are, and then create and develop their own professional profile. And it is what we call the 7 mindsets. And that is what today is all about. These 7 mindsets are so important for every leader and worker to be exposed to and understand, in order for them to be able to start to place themselves against each one of these, and then to start to develop themselves against each one of these. And that's it. If we are able to learn and remember these 7 mindsets, and then with consistency start to develop ourselves across all 7, we know that who we are as a leader will evolve as a result, and will be congruent with anything that is ethical and digital, digitally transforming. We know that because we've got the research. We know that because we've got the data. So the digital native mindset is an important mindset because it brings 2 lenses to who we are as a leader. It isn't just about the kind of, the comic strip idea of a digital native that we expect, which is, always on my mobile phone, really, really comfortable around tech. I expect to be able to walk into a shop and they know who I am and what I bought last week, and how I'm feeling, and all of that kind of prediction and expectation and seamlessness always wherever I am. I was actually talking to somebody yesterday in the Middle East, and they were talking to me on their mobile phone, hands-free in the car. Drove into a garage, still able to connect with him, still able to talk, went in the lift, still able to talk, got out of the lift to his front door, still talking all the way through. We can't necessarily do that in the UK, but they're able to do that in the Middle East. And he said, "Oh my God, but I have that expectation. That's what I would expect if I came to the UK." And I'm like, that's a digital native expectation that you wouldn't get here in the UK. So it's very much about that. Yeah, it's the pervasiveness and the seamlessness and the prediction of the use of digital technology to enrich who we are. Right? The digital native doesn't want tech to distract them as much as they want it to enrich their life. Now, you might think that's a bit, hang on a minute, Mel, is that necessarily true? But if you have a look at the younger generations, I was talking with a group of young children last week, and the age range between 11 and 16. The majority, not all, the majority of them have got control mechanisms on their mobile phones so that they don't spend too much time on TikTok. Because they know that if they didn't have these control mechanisms, they'd get addicted to it. And I'm going, but you're 12 years old. Yeah, but Mel, I don't want the technology to control me. I'm in control of the technology. So, it's really, really, really interesting. Which brings me to the second half of this mindset, which is values. My goddaughter is a vegetarian because she doesn't want to hurt the animals. And she's been a vegetarian for years. Do you know how old she is? 8. Whether that's right or wrong is irrelevant. The fact is, she is living and breathing and actively participating in her values, as opposed to passively having values, but then compromising when she's in a community environment, when she's at work. So the values thing is a really important element of the digital native mindset. Thinking about that in ourselves gives us a frame in order for us to develop. The beginner's mindset 2, is a lovely one because, it really talks about what is as important as it, to us as a leader as we ever have been. Adaptive leadership, systems leadership, resilience and courage. They are not new. They are not modern. They have been around for so long, but they are now being recognized as important. That's the key. And above that, we've got that beginner's mindset. It is no longer a leader's role to receive content to make the decision. It is now a leader's capability and skill to be curious. From content, we go to curiosity. And from curiosity, we build first principles thinking and experimental practice. There is a skill in experimental practice, just like having curiosity. That is part of the beginner's mindset, as well as a thinking stuff. The network mindset is beautiful because the network mindset allows us to be connected to each other, that community, to unite. It is about access to data, being connected to data. It's about being connected beyond our system so that we are geographically part of something and not necessarily coming to work every day and being part of a team and a department and a service area, and then and the end of the day going home, and there's a separation between the two. What the network mindset is about is actually breaking down that social separation and having congruence between the two of them. The network mindset is a beautiful mindset. The authentic mindset is about who we are, but it's also about transparency, which is a little bit of a hint from the network mindset as well, isn't it? It's about how are we access all areas open. Traditional business and traditional leadership, governance, policy, rules are all based on it's got to be closed. And then what we'll do is we will work out how and where we open. In a modern system, if you look at agile governance and digital governance, that's more about let's start open and work out where and how we should close and for how long. So think open first, not closed. And that's a really interesting one for you to take into your work environment and just start to maybe see some of the rules that your organization has got, that your system's got, or indeed the mindset that some of the individuals you work with or the leaders that you report into have. Are they evidencing that closed first to open versus that open first to then close? Because in an ideal situation, we shouldn't need to close anything unless the safety and security of a human being is at risk. That's the only time. Data mindfulness, the only thing that I will say to us all about data mindfulness is this. Data mindfulness, our relationship with data as human beings, is how we have evolved as a human species. Because data is how we communicate. So we cannot decouple who we are from data. We are data, data is us. What we want to do as leaders, being data mindful, is to reconnect ourselves with data, to bring ourselves back into congruence with the data. There are three elements to data. We have got quantitative data, qualitative data, and increasingly we are recognizing intuitive data, which comes from within. And the truth and the accuracy of intuitive data is really blowing researchers' minds. The one thing that we need to make sure is that intuitive data, when it is applied, is controlling bias and is controlling ego. Which brings me to the prepared mindset. And that prepared mindset very famously is, I often think when I think about the prepared mindset, I think of an interview that I watched with Jeff Bezos, when Jeff Bezos said, somebody asked him, what do you do with your time? And he said, well, I'm at the top of the food chain of Amazon. What do you think I do with my time? I spend all of my time in the future. And he said, that's what I just don't get about traditional business systems. The more senior you become in an organization, it's not about how much more you do. It's about how much less you do so that you can spend more time thinking about the future. What an interesting way of thinking about the organizational structure of a system, of a corporate system. The prepared mindset, of course, is about how we future-proof ourselves. So it's all about our frame of reference. If we are prepared, i.e. we have an understanding of the inevitability of what's coming on around the corner, we won't be scared when it happens. And equally, when something does happen, it won't be so incredibly unfamiliar that we will be a rabbit in the headlights and we'll freeze. Yeah, fight, flight, or freeze. We won't do any of that. We will be able to say, okay, there's something in here that I'm aware of. There's something in here that we can play with. There's something in here that we can work with. Lean into it and respond. So the prepared mindset allows leaders to innovate when others will only improve. And the final mindset is human-centered mindset. And the human-centered mindset is where we recognize every human being as equal and unique. We hyper-personalize everything. We do not design for the masses, which is how corporate businesses have been structured. We design for the few and build the competency for people to serve themselves. Hyper-personalization. Human-centered mindset is quite a tricky one for leaders to adopt and for leaders to work and develop, because it does rely heavily on what the system currently has in terms of data access for us, systems for us, cross collaboration between departments and services, and etc., etc. So the human-centered mindset really does take a lot of courage. So we lean into that adaptive beginner's mindset in order for us to really, help. And that brings me to something really important about these 7 mindsets that again gives you this guide, this frame.